behind, and that's where I always park because I'm always hauling stuff. But there's so much parking at Barnes and Noble, and it's free all-day parking. So I usually tell I don't even tell the students that there's parking back there. I just tell them to park in Barnes and Noble. For instructors, if you guys want to find a place behind, you can come in the back doors. Then as the day goes on, like on your facilitator guide, it'll tell you what to have out and ready for that day that you're going to use. Like the medical terminology cards, that type of stuff, so that you're kind of prepared for the day. This is the table I use for lunch, so I move everything out of the way or under the table, and I wipe it off with a Clorox wipe, and we always set up our buffet lunch right here. And what I try to do is make it so that we trade off. There's 4 tables with students. I trade off, and like, table 4 will be first this day, table 3, table 4, whatever, you know. Or if you've had a contest that day, that team gets to be first for lunch or whatever. So it's not always these front row people that get to lunch first because they're closest to it type of thing. Some people don't care. They wait to the end. I always wait until everyone's been through the line. Seems like there's always leftover food. It just depends on where we go that day. Any other questions?
Tell us one of your funny stories you use.
One of my funny stories?
Give us a few stories. You've got some for teaching. Give it those to us.
Okay.
And draw some of your stick figures.
Okay. Here's a good stick.
These are the important things, Anne. I know this.
So when I talk about bums, here's my bum, okay? And I talk about the fact that when most people were taught to give shots, they were taught you divide one side of your bum into quarters. And then you divide the upper quarter into quarters. And they were taught to give their shots right here in the right upper quadrant of the right upper quarter, right? Well, your sciatic nerve goes like this. So the likelihood of hitting a nerve is much more prevalent in the right upper quadrant of the right upper quadrant than if you're giving it forward on the ventrogluteal side. So I have used the little mannequin bum. I don't know where that is right now, but I have used that to show people that it's small. You can't give injections in it. And so the best thing that I think people have is I teach them to use the opposite hand of the side of the patient they're on. Have the person stand up. If they kind of put their hip out a little bit, you can feel where their hip is. And then I point my thumb towards their groin. I make a V. This is on the hip bone. I make a V like this, and I'm going to give my shot right here. Okay? And sometimes it's like right on the line of their uniform or their pants. It's right on the seam. That seems to happen quite a bit. See, when I make stick figures, I can do a stick figure like that. But GI, that was horrible because I was like, here's your esophagus, and then here's your stomach, and then as you go down, your small intestines are about 20 feet long, and then your large intestines are about 12 feet, and then right here somewhere you've got your pancreas, and right here you've got your gallbladder, which is actually really small, and your liver's on top of that, and they all have these little ducts that go in together. I mean, it's hard sometimes to see what I do, but I try to make them understand how all those ducts come together into your intestines to give fluid and the enzymes and other things that help you digest whatever it is you're eating. Funny stories, I think the mistake stories can be funny. The day that I dropped the oxygen tank, I was on West 6 at LDS Hospital. I was moving a patient from the intensive care unit over to the surgical floor, and we couldn't find a holder for the bed to put the oxygen tank in. So I said, we're in a hurry. I've got this patient coming from the emergency room. Just pull up all the arms on the, all the side rails and stuff, and I put the oxygen tank down, and it wiggled its way as we rounded the corner through the 2 arm rails, and it hit right on top of the regulator, which broke, and that thing shot like a torpedo all the way down the hall. And it went through a fire door at the end of the hall that was in a locked closet that happened to be a housekeeping closet. and it went through and you could hear all this rattling and noise inside the closet. Well, it even made a hole in the back wall of that closet after it went through it. It took him a couple of weeks to replace that door, and so until they did, they put plaster of Paris in it. So there was like this little U in the door of plaster of Paris, and every time I was around, people would go, "Ann did that, Ann did that." But it made me realize how dangerous that was. I could have killed somebody. If there had been somebody standing in the hall and that thing would have plowed down and gotten them, I could have killed somebody. So it sounds funny, and now to talk about it, it was pretty funny, but it wasn't funny at the moment. I don't think anything has ever scared me as bad as that did. Another one, I gave a patient who was allergic to, I'd been on maternity leave, I was back after 3 months, and I was still really young, but I had an order to give Percocet, and I gave Percodan. They were next to each other in the drawer. It was before we had dividers and acudoses and all that stuff. We had a medication drawer that had a key that locked it, and that was it. And I got in, and I got this Percodan and took it down. She was allergic to aspirin, which is why they had ordered Percocet. And luckily, she didn't have a reaction, but I remember getting on the phone to call the doctor and tell him what I'd done. And I remember telling the patient, "Oh my gosh, I just gave you Percodan, it has aspirin in it, you're allergic to aspirin." I remember having to get her I remember how embarrassed I was that I'd made a mistake. And I was more embarrassed than I was worried about what it would do to her. I should have been more worried about what it would have done to the patient than be embarrassed about, what people would think of me for giving the wrong. Because I've since learned how dangerous it is. And I tell this class that giving medications is the most dangerous and important thing you will ever do as an MA. And it doesn't matter if you're giving an MMR to a little kid, or if you're giving a flu shot to an adult. If you make a mistake and you give the wrong one, or you give an expired one, or you give something that they're allergic to, that is when we cause harm to our patients. And nobody goes to work in the morning saying, I'm going to hurt somebody today. I'm in a bad mood, somebody's going to pay for it. Nobody does that. All of us, when we make a mistake, it's a real legitimate mistake. Unless we just don't care. If we're there for the paycheck and we don't care about our patients or whether our patients are safe or not, then we're going to make mistakes. And we probably aren't going to tell about it either. And when we get caught, we're going to be in big trouble because then legal action can be taken against us. So, I can't think of any other stories, but I'll try to think of some.
That's good.
Okay. So,
Well, I can think of some.
We want to hear yours after. You just wait till we turn off the
After we turn off
TV.
And my versions are better too.
all right. Any other questions, you guys? I will be here for the next 2 months, so just be sure you come and teach a class at least once in the next couple of weeks.
So the way we're setting it up, we're gonna have one leader, and then someone that's gonna come and
Yeah.
teach in the morning.
So the leader should be here all day long, and she will decide what she wants to teach and what she wants you guys to teach. If you sign up to teach in the morning, the facilitator guide tells you what should be covered in the morning, so that you're aware of that. And then if you're teaching in the afternoon, the facilitator guide will tell you too. And what's really nice is if you want to come and stay all day, you don't want to be here just for half a day, that's okay too. I have really appreciated days when I've had people, and Shannon and Rachel have been here quite a bit, and it's really helpful to me personally because I don't work in the clinics. I go and observe on occasions, and I go do rounding on them and stuff to see things once in a while or to talk to their managers. But the day-to-day workings, you guys are familiar with. I'm not. And so it's so nice to have you use examples from your own clinics. This medication is just like this, this immunization sounds like this immunization. I teach them about the fact that men between the ages of 15 and 25 will probably faint on you, and have them at least sitting down when you give them a shot. Especially if you're giving Gardasil. If you're giving Gardasil or something, and how painful those can be. I talk about making sure your patient is comfortable no matter what you're doing when it comes to medications, having them sit for a few minutes after to make sure that they're going to be safe. If you're giving them an injection, that they need to be in your facility a minimum of a half hour for observation, unless they insist they're not going to. But especially if it's an adult that's by themselves, we want to make sure they're safe before we send them home, if it's a brand new injection they've never had before. So, and you don't give injections if you're your MD is not there. Yeah, those type of things. Okay, go home. It only took us an hour and a half.
Can I see